done. I've never been more excited for what's happening today. I have been a huge fan and follower of Mr. John C. Maxwell. So the fact that you guys are sitting here today, I'm keeping myself from being uncool and fangirling a little bit and jumping across the table and being like, let's take pictures. We already did that, actually. We took pictures to begin with.
Been there, done that.
So we're not actually that cool, but I love that you guys are here. And for those of you that are not familiar or you're living under a rock somewhere, I would love to introduce you to not only a New York Times bestselling author many, many times over, but world-renowned and definitely understood to be the #1 leadership expert and coach in the world, Mr. John C. Maxwell. Thank you for being here.
It's my joy.
Thanks for letting me drag
my
you
joy
to
to be
Utah
with you.
to be here. So, and his CEO, who is also not only a force to be reckoned with, but just one of the best human beings you will ever meet, Mr. Mark Cole. And Mark runs 7, correct?
Correct.
7 of John's incredibly successful businesses, and obviously has a phenomenal team. In fact, every time I see them, I tell them, your team. I mean, it is definitely a lesson in just watching the people around you. So welcome. Welcome to Utah.
Glad you're here. Glad we're here. You're already here. Glad you're here.
Yes, I'm glad to be here too.
Well, we're here for you, Becky, because this relationship that we've had in working with you has just blossomed. And I remember several years ago when I was working with you in your company, how I realized very quickly that what a good leader you are. And, the initial thought that you have of a person has to be validated. And over the years, every time I'm with you, I say to myself, she's a better leader than you thought she was in the very beginning. And I love your values. I love how you love people. And I love how you get the best out of people. And so for Mark and I to be here today with you, it's a real joy. Thanks for having us.
Well, that's all that needs to be said. Thank you for coming.
In the podcast. We're done. We're done.
Good. No, I appreciate
Well,
that.
we had breakfast this morning, just an incredible time. And John and I, on the way over, rode together. And he said, Mark, that is a leader. As if we don't already know that. But his point was, we travel the world, see a lot of leaders, get to experience a lot of people. But he said, Becky gets it. She thinks like I do. So, again, no pressure, but you got to think like John right here.
Yeah, this should be good.
Well, I did say that, but I also recognized today at breakfast that you need a little bit of help in your decision-making skills, because I can tell you, remember, Mark, she ordered something that you and I've never heard of. First of all, if you haven't heard of that food, you probably don't want to order it. And then if it's really healthy, and she ordered something. And remember, she took one bite of it, and she didn't like it.
Yeah.
And instead of saying, I'll order something else, which is it's a choice. I mean, it's a hotel, it's a restaurant. She looks around, looks at what we have, and she starts taking our food. Did you notice that?
I did.
Okay, so note to everyone, don't order the buckwheat crepes.
And that's a problem already. I'm from the South.
Buckwheat
It doesn't say fried buckwheat crepes. You already.
It doesn't say buttered buckwheat.
You are already
crepes.
in trouble.
Yeah. Well, I quickly found out, as healthy as I wanted to be this morning, chewing on leather did not work out well. So, and you guys are just validating every argument my husband and I have had for 25 years that I should order something and not eat off his plate. So.
Yeah. So the leader within you came out, and you just basically told the rest of us what to do, and so we're handing our plates over to her, and she's taking her. And then she gets, what I love about it is when she gets taken what she wants, she gives us back our little portion.
I was like, and Mark, you can try. What is it when you try something awful? You're like, you guys try this.
Yeah.
You should try this. Like, it's
what
really
are friends
horrible.
For?
I really want you to
the thing I did
experience
appreciate about that is she didn't try to
crepes.
snow us.
No.
I mean, she took one bite. When you take one bite, you can't really convince somebody it's that good, and push your plate back. But
it was that
hey,
bad.
That's all right. That's the only flaw I found in your leadership.
Yeah, that's my only flaw.
That's it.
It's the buckwheat crepes.
That's it.
So
buckwheat
don't have.
Even Trevor knows. Like, Trevor has known me for how many years?
Oh, geez, 15? Yeah.
And that's my only flaw.
Don't have breakfast with Becky.
Buckwheat crepes.
It's just that simple.
Yeah, I wish it was that good. No, but we always have a great time as well.
We do.
I really want to focus today. You guys are doing so many amazing things worldwide, and if you guys don't follow John Maxwell on social media, you need to start. If you haven't listened to his podcast, you need to start. But for what they're doing in the world today, I feel like it's almost a compilation of your body of work in a lifetime of leading and coaching And now you're at a place where you're giving it all away and transforming not just lives, but countries and communities. And it's so amazing to watch.
Well, it is so amazing. I'm very grateful, Becky, but I think for all of our podcast viewers today, I think I would not be fair to them if I didn't say, I wish you could have seen me 50 years ago. Because the biggest regret I have in my life right now is everything's kind of turned into gold. And so people look and see what we're accomplishing, and we'll talk about that some. And there could be an assumption that it's always been that great and it's always been that grand, and it hasn't been, and it wasn't. And with integrity, I always want people to realize that that I'm not as good as they think I am today. But if they just see me in the beginning, I wasn't as bad as they thought I was then either. And it's very true. I mean, there were times when I wanted to hold up my hand in the beginning and say, look, I know this didn't turn out really well, but I'm really not that bad. Trust me, I can do better. And I just think for everybody watching today and being a part of this program, I just want them to know that we're going to talk about some amazing things, but amazing things don't happen overnight, and amazing things don't happen because you've always been amazing. Amazing things happen if you've been consistent and if you've really lived on good principles and good values, and that you really stay to the task and don't get distracted. There's a compounding that happens, and then one day you're on that compounding side where everything is returning much more proportionally to you than what you know you really deserve. But in the beginning, it returns much smaller than what you really deserve. And so any people that don't stay in the game on the values and principles they live to, they when they get older, they've shortcut themselves, and they never then enjoy the amazing things that happen.
Well, and I have to say, and Mark, I mean, we've all seen this, and since breakfast, our theme today has been humility, which is a little ironic.
And we were all trying to convince each other we were more humble than the
I'm
other.
more humble.
The buckwheat humbled you.
I've got everybody beat on the humility thing. Like, we were just, it was going off. It was quite the humility topic. Like, it would have been embarrassing if everybody had.
Well, the only reason she thinks she's greater humility than she really is because she's young. And I know humility, and I know that you think you're humble, but I really am. Yeah, that's the difference. That's the real difference.
That's the only difference.
Yeah, and Mark's already wanting to chart and organize the humility.
I'm wanting us not to record all this conversation that y'all had at breakfast, talking about how y'all were writing on humility because you were so good at it. You're certain nobody else is as good as you at humility.
We got that one down. Not so much. But I love, like, what we have noticed over the years, and my husband John and I talk about this all the time, is how not only accessible you make yourself to everyone, but how important everyone feels just for being around you. And there are very few people, you know that saying, like, you can't be a prophet in your own land? I almost feel like John is the exception to that rule. There are very few people who have become more impactful or more credible as they've grown in their career. And we were all in London last week and had a chance to meet and hear from Tony Blair. And he said something that really stuck with me when he was talking about how when he got elected, he was the least equipped and the most popular. And when he left office, he was the most equipped and least popular.
Yeah. That was a great statement.
It was so great. And but you think about, especially in the culture that we live in, and being a hot topic for a hot minute, there are very few people who have stayed and kept a relevant voice the way that you have. And it's because, and I can say this because I've seen John in person many, many times in many, many places, he's just the same person. I mean, it is remarkable to see someone who lives what you actually teach over and over again. And even in hard situations, like it's not only inspiring, it really is impactful. There's a difference between motivational speakers and a John Maxwell.
Yeah. But you know what's interesting, Becky, and both to you and John, is you both have gotten to a stage in life that you could hang up the towel. You both could. It was 6 years ago when John said, I really don't know what else is on my bucket list except one thing. I want to see a country transformed. And Becky, you're in this stage of life to where you could say, what's going on. And just in the last 2 weeks, Pebble Beach, then London, I mean, there is this awakening in you. John, you had that interesting interview with Tyler Perry where you said when you can afford to quit, you can't afford to quit. Talk a little bit about that, because that really relates to both you and Becky.
Well, it was a great conversation, and as you know, he not only is an actor, but he really loves producing of the movies. And so he had a movie studio in Atlanta, and it was a small one. I mean, he was starting off, and he outgrew it, so he built another one, and he outgrew it, so he built a third one, and the third one he built, he said, I'm going to build one that I'll never have to do this again. I mean, who wants to just build all their life? And so he built this big studio only to outgrow it. Wow. And he said, John, I came to a place in my life where I looked and said, am I really going to do this again? And I don't have to do this again. I'm already an established star. I already have all the money I'm ever going to ever need plus. And I don't have to do this. And he realized that he didn't have to do it for himself. No, this is huge. Keep that in the back of your mental mind for a moment. He realized, I don't have to do this for myself. But then the more he thought about what he wanted to accomplish and how he wanted to add value to people, he said, okay, I'm going to do the fourth one. And he did the fourth one. And what Mark said, we came to the conclusion of that conversation is that when he could afford to quit, he didn't need any more power, fame, attention, money. When he could afford to quit was the moment he couldn't afford to quit.
Wow.
Because all the stuff that he had done was about to compound and just explode. And I can promise you there are a whole bunch of people quit before the big payday.
Yeah.
And now it goes back to, why did he continue? Now I think we've got to always go back to the motive of, why am I still in this game? He did not continue for himself. He continued for the people. And that's the reason to stay in the game. If I'm in it for myself, I'm out of the game. I don't need any of this at all. I can play golf and enjoy my life. But if I'm in it because I think I can make a difference in other people's lives, that keeps me in the game. And by the way, once you get to this level of I'm going to go on, you no longer are doing it for the money. You're no longer doing it for, I wonder if somebody will take my picture, and maybe I can sign somebody's book and I can feel recognized or important. You don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's it. You never know how pure a motive of a person is until they don't have to do it.
Until you take away the finish line.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But the moment that they don't have to, in other words, as long as I've got to make some money to keep myself alive and do all this stuff, I'm in the game for a lot of reasons. But the moment that you no longer need any of that stuff, then you stay in the game. Now you've purified that person's motives, and now I love what I do. But I love what I do because I see the incredible positive return that it gives to people. And I think, I know people are watching this doing takeaways, because Becky, you're always going to give them takeaways. And I think one of them is what Mark said: if you can afford to quit, you probably can't afford to quit. And the other one is the fact that make sure that when you no longer need stuff and you stay in the game, your motives are really pure, because you're only doing it to add value to people. That's the only reason that you do it.
Yeah. And it's amazing from that perspective, and of course John taught that as well, but you take away that finish line, and all of a sudden those intentions are very clear of why you're doing this, why you're not doing this, what motivates you every single day, because it's not about accomplishment anymore.
Not at all.
And you change that motivation, it changes everything.
It changed everything.
Everything.
When I remember when I started off writing books, my mentor in writing books, Elmer Towns, in his lifetime had sold 100,000 books. And I never set goals like that for how books. But when I saw that he'd sold 100,000 books, I said to myself, oh my, maybe that would be like something I could accomplish. Maybe I could sell 100,000 books in my lifetime. And I told him that. I said, I'm going to try to sell 100,000 books in my lifetime. And that was my goal. But then I went right back to adding value to people. Well, I passed the 100,000 mark, and I passed the 200,000. And what you understand is the more you make, or the more that you sell, or whatever it is, the numbers as they get higher, they mean less.
Yeah.
I mean, if you talk about the fact that, I made, I went from making $30,000 a year to $130,000 a year. People say, oh my gosh, you quadrupled your income and this is amazing. Well, it is amazing. But when you say, I went from $1 million a year to 1.2 million a year. It said, now what was it? Were you a million? Were you at 1.2?
Yeah.
What,
Who
what's your
cares?
number? And what happens is the higher you go, the numbers mean
true.
less, as it should be. But here's the key: when you're trying to add value to people, and your motives are just, how can I make a difference in people's lives? All of a sudden, that stuff, it pales in comparison. Because the moment that you go from I'm successful to I'm significant, and you remember success is all about what I do for myself or what I do for my family. Nothing wrong with success, by the way.
Right.
I wish everybody watching this podcast would to be successful. I want that for you. But if you stop at success, you stop short. I mean, honest to God, I know a lot of, and you do too, Becky.
Yeah.
You do too, Mark.
Yep.
We know a lot of successful people that are not happy.
Right.
They're not fulfilled at all. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to significance, adding value to people, and your purposes do that, I have never met one unhappy, significant person.
That's very true.
Not once. I've never, because now it's not about you.
Yeah.
I heard a talk just the other day that was really good, and he was talking, and he said, all great leaders need to know themselves, be comfortable with themselves, and then, I love this third side, and then forget themselves. I love this now, but I love it. Know yourself, know your strengths, know yourself, get comfortable with yourself, and then forget yourself. And when I heard that, I said to myself, you can't forget yourself until you're comfortable with yourself.
So true.
An uncomfortable person with himself is still raising their hand and saying, notice me, did anybody see me? Did you watch what I had just done? So I love that process. Know yourself, be comfortable with yourself, and then forget yourself. And that forgetting yourself stage is the greatest stage in the world, because no longer do I get up and I think, oh my gosh, I wonder if anybody will buy my book today. I wonder if anybody will come and hear me speak. It's all over. That's all behind me.
Yeah.
Now I can focus on one thing. How do I add value to you? How do I add value to you? How do I add value to all the people that are watching this podcast today? It's all about them. Once you cross that line, that's when significance happens.
Do you ever step back and let it impact you how many people, and I guess this is the mind-blowing part to me, is how many people go through that process, and because they're skipping those steps, again, that significance just seems out of reach for them. I mean, they're at at a place where they can't be honest with themselves yet, or so that hasn't allowed them to know themselves yet, and then be able to truly give of themselves. It's just amazing to me. I mean, I literally turned 44 a few weeks ago, and to be at this age and surrounded by so many other people at that same age who still have no idea who they are and what they're capable of, and the impact they can have on other people, which is why watching you guys in transforming countries has just been so awe-inspiring. So
Can I jump in on that just for
do.
just for a second, because I love the point you brought up, because there are many people watching us right now.
yeah, who feel that same way.
They don't know themselves yet, and they're not comfortable with themselves. And I don't want them to beat themselves up, because I have an answer for that.
Yes.
Because I think there are many people who have a hard time getting over that hump. And my answer is very simple. Don't try to do something big for others, but intentionally start doing something small for others every day. The greatest way to discover yourself is to lose yourself into others.
Yeah.
The greatest way to feel good about yourself and get comfortable is to know every day you add value to others. And so if you're watching us and you're saying, wow, I'm kind of in that, I'm trying to find out who I am, or I'm trying to get comfortable with who I am, I'm saying the way to do that isn't to do more, I got to do more, inward research on me. I mean, I watch people that you can do that all your life.
Yeah.
And never figure it out. Again, but do something small. Don't start big. Just stay. Every day I add value to people, and it will begin to increase your value as you see yourself, because you begin to see how you're helping people.
Yeah.
And that's just a little practical thing to get them going.
I love that, because I still feel like, we're still all lost to a point, for sure, which is, I think, why people have drawn so close to podcasts and things that are giving them authentic content and feeling like I can relate to this, but then someone's giving me a direction to go. And for those that are wondering, how did Becky end up in the same room with John Maxwell and Mark Cole? The simplest answer is because I basically stalked him, which sounds
the real question
sounds scary because I might have just given a lot of people permission to start stalking you.
The real question is, how did John and Mark get in the room?
Yeah.
See, that's right.
That's the real
This is
question.
why they are who they are.
Mark, that's exactly you were.
Yeah.
We are on the same. How did we get it?
Yeah. Again, it's time to go home.
How
We're
did
done.
we get out of
Good.
with her?
Let me
Everybody's good?
piggyback on that question or that point that you just made, though, Becky, because all of my life with John, I've been with John for 20 years, 9.5 as the CEO of our ever-expanding companies.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly over my head. John talks about that. He's over his head. There's a difference in John Maxwell being over his head and staying comfortable in his own skin and forgetting himself, not taking himself too seriously, all the things that I've learned and even tried to teach others about John Maxwell. But then there's me, that's the leader of a leadership icon company. And that is daunting every day. And I have to constantly, it's not a destination that I arrived at that said,
Right.
forget myself. I have to forget myself often
Yeah.
because I keep reminding myself of myself, that I'm inadequate or look at me. Either way. And I balance that tension. And so I think for a lot of us, and I don't know if John understands this, it'll be interesting for you to answer. He has been comfortable in his skin. He goes in and speaks to presidents and we're going to transform this country. And I go, we are? I mean, and he's very confident in it, but also not caught up in it.
Right.
That's where I would like to be. I'm still down here dealing with the tension of taking myself too seriously. And so I lead a leadership organization. I now speak often on John Maxwell's stage. You've done this, Becky.
Yes.
Step up after the incredible communicator John Maxwell and grab the microphone and go.
Who organized that?
Who
Let's
is-
put Becky and
who is
Mark.
mad at me
You're
that did
speaking
that
right
to
after
us,
John
right?
Maxwell.
As it should be. We keep climbing. We keep.
Yeah, shouldn't we should just end after
Failing
that?
forward.
Yeah.
Yes,
Failing
yes.
forward.
Yeah, flopping
Flopping
forward is
forward.
the sequel to that. Right?
So just live in that. I think for a lot of us, we have to live in that tension, remind ourselves, and don't get caught up in it, but recognize when you do that it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about something much greater than you.
Well, I do want to jump in on that for just a moment, if you don't mind. Because, I was a pastor for 25 years.
Yes.
Okay. And by the time I was 28, I had the 10th largest church in America. So it put me on the stage with people old enough to be my father and grandfather. I mean, I'm literally late 20s, early 30s. I'm speaking with Paul Harvey and Cabot Roberts and Zig Ziglar and leaders of country. I mean, and I'm the kid, and I felt that way. So Mark, I've been there. And I remember having a conversation one day with one of the major players, and he and I were going to be on the platform that morning together. Fortunately, I was going first. Fortunately, no. But I shared with him. I said, I don't belong here. And I'll never forget. He looked at me and he said, "You don't feel that you belong here.
yeah.
But you belong here. You didn't invite yourself. We invited you, and we're not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We invited you because you have a message that these people need to hear." Now, I wouldn't say that was the great eureka healing catalyst, but I'm going to tell you something. I put that internally.
Yeah.
And I didn't say I belonged there.
Yeah.
Somebody that I looked up to said I belonged there. And I think one of the best things that we can do in our leadership is to point to people that are up and coming and tell them you belong here. He didn't tell me that I was the greatest speaker on that platform.
Yeah.
He didn't tell me that people came to hear me. He didn't because they didn't. I was the kid. None of that things happened. But he just said, "You belong here, and we invited you here, and let us be the judge of that." And when I made Mark the CEO of the company, I didn't make Mark the CEO of these companies to fail. I didn't say, "Boy, I'd like for you to. Could you put me in financial ruin here? Could you mess up?" No, I'm very selfish. I said, "No. You belong here." Now, was he a great CEO in the beginning? No. Did he have all the answers? No. Did he have any experience? No. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm going to mentor him. I'm going to work with him. He's going to become that. I saw him who he was, which I really loved, but I saw him who he became. Now, for Mark and for you and all the people watching this podcast, you have to see yourself not as, can I be John Maxwell? Can I be Becky Purcell? Can I be Mark Cole? You have to see yourself as, can I be me? And can I, in being me, grow me to be the person that person that I look up to believes I could become.
To become the greatest version of you.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's right.
You ought to do something on
Someone
that.
should do a
we should.
podcast on that.
Nah, it never worked.
Come on, girl. That
should.
just came right out of the top of your head, didn't it? Huh? You just said, "Whoa!"
That's good.
But doesn't that work?
That's a good marketer right there.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
Someone's been in sales.
That's
So I just think that again for our. Let me tell you something. Highly successful people can be very discouraging. And
Yeah.
I know that. And it bothers me greatly when I see highly successful people become discouraging. I don't think they want to be, but I think so many times they're talking about what they're accomplishing and what they're doing. And I'm sitting over there and I'm not accomplished anything in my life. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, they're way beyond me. They're bigger, better, faster, smarter than me. And I could never get there. And if when you're done working with people, they think they could never get there. You haven't done a good job for them.
It's true.
So I think it's always good to let people realize that they're seeing me at 72. They should have seen me at 22. Hey, if you would have seen me at 22, you would all be greatly encouraged. Trust me. You would all be rolling up your sleeves and say, oh my gosh, let me at it. Because I really, not being humble, I really wasn't that good. But what I lacked in experience and what I lacked in talent at that point, what I didn't lack was passion. What I didn't lack is the fact that I believed I had something that could help people. And that's what got me through until I got good.
Have you always felt like there was just a message in you?
Yes.
Always?
I have. Honestly, I have. And I do say this. I think that gave me a distinct advantage over a lot of people who at a later age maybe get that message, but they don't get it as young as I. But I have. And I have to be very fair on that. I just have to say I've always felt that God loved me greatly and that God had an incredible plan for my life and that I could make a difference.
Yeah.
And that I've always had that. Yes, I have. And I think that gave me I tell you what I think it did for me. I think it got me started quicker than most people my age. And if you get started quicker than most people at your age, it's a distinct advantage. So I think that without any question.
You had clarity at a younger age.
Yeah, very, very much. I've never lacked. I've never gotten up one day and said, I wonder what I should do today with my life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The problem is I got everybody else up and like you, Becky, I told them what they should be doing for their.
And now I'm like, what am I supposed to do every day?
It's kind of like, God's got a great plan for your life, but if He hasn't talked to you yet, let me tell you what He's thinking. You know what I'm saying?
Everybody else at home has no idea how funny that actually is and how applicable it actually is. But that is something that Mark and John have taught me. I mean, that is a lesson that is so heavy in my heart right now, is letting go of having to have all the answers. And it's amazing how much more comfortable, especially if of your faith, you're at a place where you can literally turn that over to God and understand that He's much more competent in directing your life than you ever will be. But being able to be comfortable with not having all the answers and not having all the direction or not even having all the clarity that you wish you had, and how at 44 and still having no idea what I want to do when I grow up, being okay with that as opposed to 22, I wouldn't have been able to sleep at night.
Let me tee you off on that. The more comfortable you are with yourself, the more comfortable you are with your future. The less comfortable I am with where I am now, the less comfortable I am with tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful thing when a person can look at themselves and say, I'm all in. I'm all in. That because I don't have clarity about tomorrow doesn't mean that I'm going to be reserved or I'm going to stop or I'm going to hold back. I'm going to move because movement brings the resources to you.
Yeah.
But I think one of the great things about success and accomplishing things in life is that if you move, good things will happen. I think if you haven't experienced success, sometimes when you move, you're not sure good things will happen. And so I think it helps you also develop.
And you're hesitating.
Yes. It gets that initiative going. I mean, I don't mean this unkindly.
Yeah.
As I look at, I hope I've got another 10, 20 years. I hope I could be, working with Mark for the 10, 20 years and supporting him. But can I tell you something? Here's what I know. I don't know everything in the future, but I'll tell you what I do know. there's some amazing things out there. And I'll never discover them if I don't keep moving. And so I'm going to keep moving. Now, if Mark pressed me and said, now, what amazing things are out there, John?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can give him all the answers. I give him a few answers. I can see things happening. But it doesn't really matter. It's okay because I'm comfortable with who I am. So now I'm comfortable to move.
Yeah.
And there's a terrific release and freedom that comes from that allows you then to go where other people won't go and open up doors that I knock on those doors and sometimes those doors don't open. Some doors I take out the keys. Sometimes they don't unlock. But it's okay. I look and say, well, I shouldn't be doing that anyway. There's something over here I can be doing, and I just move over real quick instead of looking back and saying, I wonder what I did wrong to not get that door open, and I wonder what I missed, and was it a timing issue? And I don't mean this unkindly. You only have so much energy in your life,
Right.
and you can either take that energy and put it in a positive way to move ahead, or you can take that energy and you can ask yourself questions that you'll never be able to answer. And I just refuse to live in that world very long. I mean, there are times when I get in it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get out of it real quick because I know there's no return here. There is no return. All the return is in the positive energy that I can move forward.
So can you remember a time in your life where you just exhausted yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally wore out.
To where you're just, you can almost convince yourself to quit because you
Yes.
just exhausted yourself.
Well, there have been times when I was a pastor, I quit every Sunday night. It was kind of like, man, I spent all day with those people. I'm kind of sick and tired of them. You know what I'm saying? Oops, Scott. But I'd get some sleep on Monday morning. I'd say, okay. But I never re-upped only for a week. I just re-upped okay, I'll work. I'll preach next Sunday. I'll teach next Sunday. And by Sunday, I say, oh, crap. You know what I mean? So, yes, all the time. Now, see, I think that's just very human.
It is.
I think what separates successful and unsuccessful people is not their emotions or their feelings. I think what separates them is successful people have learned how to take those feelings and appreciate them, even embrace them. That's how you get comfortable with yourself.
Yeah.
But the same sense, no, listen to me, this is very important. You don't let those feelings define you. The moment I let those feelings define me, they control me. And the moment I let those feelings control me, I'm out of this game.
Yeah.
Because leadership is not easy, and there are no 2 good consecutive days in a leader's life. And so when you sign up for this kind of a journey, you didn't sign up for something easy or automatic. And so when I watch, that's why I don't like, but by the way, that's why I don't like a complaining leader. Sometimes leaders just wear me out. They just, all they talk about, all the problems, and I just want to say, well, quit. If it's good, because leaders always have issues. I mean, every day of my life, I've got something I don't like happening, and I've got something I've got to do that I don't want to do, and I signed up for. That's the leadership package.
Yeah.
And so, instead of me sitting there and complaining about that, I sit there and I creatively say, now, how do I handle that? Because I have to handle it. Because a leader doesn't have the opportunity of saying, you know what, I think I'll bypass on that problem. You bypass on about 10 problems, and you got a problem you won't solve.
Yeah.
You got to fix them. You got to deal with them now. But you deal with them now with a pleasantness, because that's part of leading. And what I tell leaders all the time, if you like all the perks of leadership, understand those perks have a price.
There's the flip side.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So don't try to avoid the price to get the perks, because that's not a real world.
Yeah. And I've watched Mark, the epitome of managing chaos.
Oh, he's good.
The epitome. Yes. And I love when John talks about, if you're already underwater, what does it matter if you're a foot underwater or 100 feet underwater? You're underwater.
You're over your head.
You're over your head. You're drowning anyway. You're treading water, basically.
Yeah.
But I have seen you master that art of just managing chaos, and I think sometimes that gets overlooked as quite the skill that leaders have.
Yeah, I think what you're touching on, in my opinion, is it's his job to create chaos, to find opportunities.
Sure.
You're really good at it.
You're good.
I excel at that. I am a chaos
Another thing
creator.
you excel at.
Oh, yes.
I'm not going to say that this did or did not happen, but he could have created a little chaos at breakfast this morning. My mind's just been whirling on that just
hold on.
since we talked.
We're going south now. We had that totally on her plate.
Yeah, I was the chaos.
You understand? understand? We had that in her
Buckwheat.
corner.
It all
on her
stemmed from the
plate,
buckwheat.
And all of a sudden, do you know
the buckwheat, that's
boy,
right.
Mark, what, yeah, I mean, you just
But
go
I
over
watched
there and
you
you're
too.
taking her plate and sticking it over here on my side.
All they're going to get out of this podcast is don't order buckwheat pancakes.
That's the one thing they did.
takeaway.
Yeah, what did you learn?
What did you
We didn't
learn?
learn all those principles, those great
Episode-
principles. Yeah, I'm not going to order it.
But
what we're
but
titling this
but
episode.
really, I mean, that is he's looking for opportunity. In fact, he's mentoring me right now
Yeah.
on creating vision and seizing opportunity. It's the next level of mentoring that John is doing for me. I've been with him for 20 years.
Yeah.
Mentored me on leading, mentored me on speaking, communicating. Now mentoring me on creating vision, seizing opportunity. But going back to your point on chaos, I think that a dynamic leader needs to create chaos. I think they should be uncomfortable if there's not something chaotic.
They
going
thrive
on.
in it.
They thrive in it. If they're not creating enough
Yeah.
chaos, then they're living on yesterday's successes or yesterday's task list.
Yeah.
So I think the beautiful thing about John creating that chaos that you're talking about, me managing that, is John very much empowers me to manage that chaos. It would be one thing if there was chaos being created. I was expected to lead in chaos, but I had no power. I had no
That's a great
sense of
point.
ownership.
Great
And so the dynamic that works for us is I appreciate that he's creating chaos. In fact, keep creating it. And I'm being serious. And by the way, keep putting it on her table
Yeah,
too.
it's fine.
we will take that. But create it and empowering him to not feel inhibited to go create something that doesn't make sense. But then that's reciprocated when he empowers me to go try to make sense of the chaos.
Which again is that power in that team. That for anyone that's been around the John Maxwell team, you see that, and how inspiring it is to understand your strengths, your roles in that team. And I think probably the most beautiful aspect to that I see is that no one's ever trying to outshine each other.
Not at all. There's no competitiveness at all.
None. It's literally just shine, because your strength is your strength, and it's just as beautiful as everybody else's light. Just you don't need to outshine, just shine.
No. The only thing we're competitive in is we're competitive in ourselves of making ourselves better. Yeah. But we complete one another, not compete with one another.
That's true.
And I think that's a sign of a very healthy team when everybody knows where honestly, without Mark, it's over for me.
Yeah.
I can't make it without Mark. He every day runs things that if I had to stop creating and leading and writing and speaking, I would go back into something that would not have near the return.
It would cripple you.
That's right.
Yeah.
But every person I have on my team, I look at them and I know because of them, I'm better.
Yeah.
Every one of them, I'm better. And they also know because of me, they're better.
Yeah.
And that's when you have a healthy relationship in life. You have a healthy team. When everybody understands, everybody around me is making me better, and I'm making everyone else better. That's when you know you've
power.
hit that. That's when you know you've hit that sweet spot.
Yeah.
John, I'm curious, how are you organizing your thoughts nowadays? You know, I saw you, this is like 10 years ago, and I remember you talking about the importance of cataloging thoughts and ideas, and then I saw you maybe a few years later, and you're like, stopped cataloging, you know? You had such a system for it. What's kind of a practical method for somebody? You know, we're talking about, you know, waking up every day feeling like you've got this message inside of you. Yeah. Somebody that's written as many books as you have, how do you organize your thoughts and communicate that?
Well, I still organize them, but I have a great team.
Her name is Erin.
Yeah, her name is
Exactly.
She's in the corner typing on a laptop as we speak.
So that's the takeaway. We all need
Everyone needs an Erin.
That's right.
Her number is 555.
Yeah, exactly. We'll flash it at the bottom of the screen.
Literally, she's over there right now, gleaning everything we talk about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because what'll happen with me? I go speaking when I come off stage, and the people will be going, and I'll have all these moments,
And she's got it all.
and I'll look at it and I'll say, okay, what did I say out there?
Yeah.
You know, that really had the impact. So she, you know, I go out and mine the gold, but she gleans the gold. She gleans it and then brings it back to me. She does it for Mark also.
Yep.
But just real simple, since this is, you know, you could see this. Every day, these are just my quotes. And every day, I just put more quotes in there. And I mean, you can just go down the list. And they all have to, this one's on expectation. This one's on vision. This one's on perspective. This one's on problems. This is on the values. This is on failure. This is on risk. This is on courage. This is on thinking. And it's all here. And whenever I hear something good, I just get it in there. and then send it to Erin, because maybe she wasn't with me when I heard it. She does the same thing for us.
Yeah.
She finds something good, she throws it. What she does really exceptional is she'll take something that we teach or a principle, and she'll say that'll work over here.
Yeah.
So, some people don't have the ability.
Context. She sees the context.
She sees the context,
She
and she says, "Oh, John, when you talked about this, if you use this, that would really fit really well." Yeah. And what's interesting is this may help also the podcast people in developing your team. Is this happened several years ago, and I had for the John Maxwell team, I was giving a lecture every year on the John Maxwell DNA, I think it was. And I'd done this about 3 times, and so Erin was with us, and she said, "Do you mind? Could I see the lecture?" And so I said, "Sure." She said, "Would you mind if I updated it and put some fresh thoughts in it?"
Yeah.
I thought this will be interesting, because I didn't know.
Yes.
But I said, "Sure, go have at it."
Yes.
So she gives it back to me a few hours later, and she's got these new thoughts and these new ideas.
New illustration.
And immediately I thought, now this is interesting. I would have never discovered that gift if I wouldn't have empowered her.
Yeah.
If I wouldn't have said yes. And so many times what happens is we say, well, if I empowered that person, what happens if they're not any good? Well, then you don't empower them anymore.
Yeah.
It's an IQ test. But here's the other question you ought to be asking myself. If I don't empower that person, will I ever find out where they can add value to me?
Yeah.
And see, I take the approach, empower them. And if she would have handed it back to me, it was okay, but wouldn't. That'd have been okay. She still had a role to help us, and I would have kept right on going. But all of a sudden, this was a eureka moment for me. All of a sudden, I thought, she's good. And when Mark had to start doing a lot of speaking, he didn't have time to develop.
Right.
I mean, this man's
Create all
running
the
companies,
content. Yeah.
and in fact, I don't want him. That would be a
Yes.
waste of his time. He's got to lead people. And so, he looked at me immediately and said, "Can I have Erin to help me with my JMT stuff and my talks?" I said, "Absolutely." And she does the same thing for him. But again, it goes back to Becky. One is too small of a number to achieve greatness. You show me any person that's doing great things, and I'll show you a person that has great people around them.
Yeah.
You just can't do it by yourself.
Yeah, and what's mind-blowing is to watch so many organizations. I think in business especially, one of the most frustrating things I've ever seen is to watch an organization where somebody says, stay in your role, stay in your lane, don't, that's not your job.
Yeah.
And then they get offended or upset when somebody comes back and says, or they're not doing more than what they're asked to do, when you've created that culture and created that community. And it goes back to that idea that most employees just do enough to not get fired, and their employer pays them enough to not quit, and neither is a healthy environment. So I love recognizing those things and being able to speak power into them and letting them see those things. Because I'm sure, just like you talked about, that moment when someone actually said, you are supposed to be here. We're not stupid. We wouldn't have you if you weren't supposed to be here. And I know there was a moment with Mark when you spoke that into him, and I can remember a distinct moment when someone spoke that into me, and to this day they probably don't even realize they did that for me. I have a brother-in-law. I hope he watches this. I don't think I've ever had this conversation with him. I was 19 years old. I was newly married, believe it or not. I know I'm from Utah. We're crazy out here. 19 years old, and my brother-in-law, who was running his own business, had hired my husband as an engineer. And all of them have college degrees, and their minds they're just geniuses when it comes to that industry. And I remember how he was looking for people to hire, and we were just standing in front of his house in a cul-de-sac, and he was talking to John about the kind of people we needed to hire, and then he looks right over and he's like Becky.
Oh, beautiful.
Wow.
And still, that was 25 years ago. Yeah. And I still remember that moment and what it did for me, that he just thought that of me and actually said it out loud. So it is so monumental when you feel that, to be able to say it to someone, to just that power of being able to let them see maybe an aspect that they didn't recognize of themselves before. And we all have that power in us to be able to do that for someone else. And I love the idea that if you can speak that kind of power into one, imagine what you could do with a whole community, let alone a whole country. And you guys are living that right now. And following you, just even on our text messages or social media or those kind of things. I mean, to watch you in Costa Rica one day and Guatemala the next, and And then I'm getting pictures from you when you're in Iran and Saudi Arabia and all over the world, and changing what their future looks like. So talk to me about how you see this unfolding. I mean, you've obviously already have it all in place, and this curriculum is impactful. I have it in my hands. I'm loving every aspect of it. But kind of get our followers involved with where you see the vision of John Maxwell Leadership Foundation going.
Well, I want Mark to add to this because he, again, has to do the daily running of it. But again, for 19 years through Equip, another nonprofit work that we have, we trained over 5 million leaders in every country of the world. So we became
5 million
5
leaders.
million in every country of the world, and we did it in a 19-year period, and we did it with volunteers.
Wow.
We did it with volunteers. And when we finished that, I mean, we could have stopped right then. Again, when you can afford to quit, you can't afford to quit. Because it was more than what I ever thought. I thought one time maybe in my lifetime I could see 1 million trained in some countries of the world, but I never thought, but good people around me, we got to that. And then I looked at my board and I looked at my team and I said, we need to go to another level. And I think this is where most people miss it. Instead of saying, oh, look what we have achieved, I said, we've achieved this not to have a party, although let's have a party.
Yeah.
We've achieved this to go to the next level. You don't jump 5 steps at a time. And this next level was to transform leaders. I said, you see, a trained leader makes a difference, but a transformational leader makes a big difference. A trained leader helps people get through changes, but a transformational leader helps people change. There's a world of difference.
Yeah.
It's another level. And so we said, let's do that. And again, just like when we started to train leaders, we knew we wanted to do it, but we didn't have a plan. We just had to go out and trial and error it until we figured it out. And we did the same thing with transformational leaders. And being who I am, which is a ridiculous visionary, instead of saying, let's start with a town or a village, or let's start with one small group in a family, or how about maybe sometime perhaps we could do a community, I said, let's do a nation. Let's just, but we had trained leaders in all these nations, so I was nation conscious. And so I said, let's do a nation. And we picked Guatemala to be our first nation, primarily, 2 reasons. We had boots on the ground, didn't we, Mark? We had good people there that could really handle that. And secondly, because it was very close in proximity.
Wait, don't ruin this for me, because I was just picking you squirreling a globe and just like dot on the map. But no, there was thought to it.
Thought.
There might have
And the
been some
thought was
intention
from
to it.
Florida, it's about 2.5 hours to get to Guatemala. Because we knew we were going to have to, because we didn't
It's
know what we're
true.
doing. We're going to have to keep doing
We
it.
need
We're
to
going
be
to have
there.
we're going to have to keep that presence, we just didn't know. And so we said that's what we're going to begin. And then, of course, as always, I get this great vision, and I take the baton and say, hey, isn't that a great vision? Let's go transform countries. Here, Mark. Here, Mark. It's yours. Tell me how we did it. And of course, then he has the responsibility of doing it, and you can kind of pick up from there, friend.
Kinda like Becky with her buckwheat pancakes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
And just passes it on to
It starts.
We're
It
never
starts at
gonna let that
breakfast.
go.
It starts at breakfast. Well, I won't give all of the numbers, Becky, but we've now been invited by 22 countries, presidents, heads of states, that has been impacted by John's work, saying, "Come in, our country is yours."
They already know it's happening.
They know it's happening.
Yes.
Come in and help us transform our
Yeah.
country. So now we're being very selective. Back to your point, we're not spinning the globe and putting a finger on a country. But just in Guatemala alone, and we have launched 3 countries, but in Guatemala alone, we have now had over 1 million people in the last 5.5, almost 6 years, 500,000 adults, over 523,000 kids that have been through our values-based leadership training.
Yeah.
And it's in a round table because we believe that transformation starts small and goes big. And so really the whole concept is all about changing your world. How does an individual change their world that then changes their community, that changes their country? And we started with country transformation. I just mentioned that. But we believe now we need to move into community transformation.
Yeah.
What does it look like to get the 8 streams of influence mobilized and address the need in their community that would transform their community for the betterment of their people. What are the significant things that we can do to mobilize people? We believe, Malcolm Gladwell taught in The Tipping Point, that 10% of a population going after one thing with a similar platform will transform a community. And so that's what we're doing in Guatemala. Guatemala has almost 17 million people. We're going after 1.7 million people that will be in our roundtable learning values. Again, why? Because in our opinion, John has a responsibility to steward this influence that he's been given. It's been years and years and years. There is no finish line. He's playing an infinite game. And therefore, we believe we have a stewardship responsibility to do that. So we are taking values. Why? Because we believe values-based leadership is lost. There is a values vacuum in leadership
and everyone's
today.
Figured that out.
Everyone.
I mean, have you ever seen a time more receptive to
Never.
this?
Never.
But
Could
why?
we have done this? I mean,
We could have done
literally
it 10
5
years
years
ago,
ago,
5 years
10
ago.
years
Timing.
ago.
Timing. It's huge.
But here's why.
Unreal.
I mean, in every community, this is not just a U.S. statement, but in
Right.
every community, they are no longer being influenced by political leaders
Or religious leaders.
or religious leaders or business leaders.
Yep,
Wall
that's true.
Street, Enron.
We don't trust anybody
We don't
anymore.
trust anybody anymore. So we believe the reason is because of the values
Yeah.
vacuum. So John and his team are incredible
Values
team.
vacuum. What a great way to say that.
It's a
And-
great term and
Yes.
phrase.
John and his team, which includes you, Becky, is going after now community transformation to make sure that we don't only just do it at the country level.
Yeah.
We believe really change is going to happen.
Yeah.
Again, you'll teach this better than me. Top down, inside out, which is values, small, big, which is mass movements don't start with a mass, they start with a few. And so that's why we're using the roundtable methodology.
Yeah, and my team is called Buckwheat, just so you know. Somehow I had to work that in. Well, I'm loving this, and you guys know I'm all in. I mean, we're definitely at a place in life, and I know so many people are, and I'd love for those that are ready for it to reach out too. But being able to be a part of that and taking that curriculum, and I've seen it, like just reading it gets me excited, and recognizing this is going to be in my children's hands and
Yes,
your
it is.
children's hands,
Yes.
and anyone that's at a place where they just need more significance and purpose and clarity. And of course, we know that comes from building that foundation, which is just lacking, and you're just giving it away. Just
Well, we
giving it
are.
away.
We're giving it away because we know it'll make a difference. And as you know, there's nothing in it for us.
Right.
I'm very fortunate. I don't need money. I don't need any of that anymore in my life. And so therefore, it's an act of love, and it's a major commitment on our part. But when we think of community transformation, Becky, we think of you. Right. Because when people ask me, say, how do you build a movement? It's very simple. Go find some leaders. Mm-hmm. And leaders have the ability to make things happen. And when we think of you and our relationship, because we've been going together now for quite some time, we know each other well. There's a great trust factor. Becky, you're one of the best leaders I've ever met in my life. And I've met hundreds of thousands of leaders.
Wow.
You have terrific gifts in your life. You have a beautiful heart. And to think that we're going to be able to partner with you in community transformation and watch you begin this movement here is very, very exciting to us. And we're just going to serve you and support you and come alongside of you and let you tell us, what meals we get to eat at breakfast.
Yes.
And that whole process. But
I'd also like to know who did not put tissues on this table. Like,
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Okay.
But the whole point of it is you build movements with leaders.
You do.
And what I'm saying about even in our podcast today is you've got people watching this and seeing it. And here's what's going to happen. There's a bunch of people when they get done, they're going to say, that was a good podcast. Mm-hmm. But there's going to be a few people, and they're going to say more than that was a great podcast. Their heart's going to start to beat.
Yeah.
And they're all of a sudden going to say, I feel what they're feeling. And for those, they just need to get a hold of you.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to help them to be able to do that in their lives and in their families and their places of business and their communities. And so, I always tell people all the time, when I teach the visions that I teach, they're not for everyone, but they're for someone.
Yeah.
And the someone will take them to everyone.
Yes.
And so I just, vision kind of separates people. You get the people who want to get in the game and the people who don't want to get in the game. But the people who want to get in the game, they come alongside. And I think one of the benefits of the podcast will be, two. One, don't have breakfast with Becky.
Don't.
And
Yes.
but number two is after breakfast, get a hold of her.
Yeah.
Yes.
And see if you can be part of the
After 10 a.m.
Yeah, after
basically.
10 a.m. Yeah,
My life looks better.
Get a
We
hold
hope
of her
lunch is
and see
better.
if you can be part of the transformation team
a hot
because
mess up
we're
until
needing
then.
a bunch of them.
We do. And I can tell you, nobody will make you feel more awake and alive than being around a John Maxwell and a Mark Cole in your life. So thank you, gentlemen, for
Thank
being
you
here
guys
today.
for being here.
Thanks for
Yeah,
spending
it's
this
our
time
joy.
with us.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
you guys at home, again, reach out to us, send us a message, follow along. Every single podcast will help you kind of get on track to finding that greatest version of you. And there is no finish line involved in any of this. So it really is about how you can make that difference and that significance in somebody else's life. So thank you guys for living that and showing us what that looks like. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
until next time, guys, love you all. Have a beautiful day.